Welcome to Truth Be Told, the podcast about being authentic in order to live your truth. I am your host, Pierre Kasongo. Today, I am honored to have another special guest on our podcast. Ejadamen Ogidan is a first-generation Canadian immigrant originally from Nigeria, West Africa. Burdened with the usual expectation to settle quickly, study, and get a job in a career that is considered respectable in her community, Ejadamen pursued the dream to become a medical doctor in Canada for 7 years. In 2021, she pivoted and decided to become an entrepreneur. She took the bold step to quit her job and follow her dream to be a business owner. Ejadamen is an independent licensed insurance advisor who is passionate about increasing financial literacy and financial peace of mind for individuals, especially the Black, Indigenous, and people of color community. She does this through her passion for teaching and sharing holistic knowledge on living your authentic life. Ejadamen's firm belief is that health, wealth, and well-being are interconnected and available to all, not just the few. Listeners and viewers, it is my pleasure to welcome Ejadamen. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me, Pierre.
What I've noticed is that you post a lot about like awakenings, and a lot of it seems to have to do with definition of self. Like, for example, like all you the post that you show a lot about, like waking up, and it and self-awareness. And one of them is having to do with the allegory of the cave, and that it seems like you want individuals to be to not live in a closed-mindedness, but really open up to their surroundings.
So open up to the surroundings, yes, but also open up more to themselves and who they can be. My idea of that is that when we're born, we are born where we are. We are born in a certain environment and we get to learn to grow up a certain way with certain beliefs, with certain norms, and so on, right? But what if you want to do something different? What if you like something different? And what if you don't know beyond where you are, right? And if you're having that closed-mindedness, then you don't get to experience more. So it's beyond the environment. It's also experiencing and being open to other ways of being that might be more true to you than where you grew up, right? So that's how I see that part.
An example of that is this constant idea of how we're supposed to be living that life of, go to school, get a degree, and get a job. But that being said, we've learned that it's not always that path that everybody has to follow. There's different ways that it works through life for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
And even just saying so in your bio in your life, like you even decided to go in a different route and decided to be a doctor. Like what was it that made you decide to go from perhaps being a doctor to being an entrepreneur?
Okay, so let me back up because I was thinking about it and it's kind of weird. So I'll just kind of give a bit of background. So I love science, have always been interested in science. And the way educational institutions go is that you do a bit of everything first, and then you branch into what you kind of think you like. At least that was my experience in Nigeria. And from as early as grade 10, you could decide if you wanted to go to the arts or if you wanted to go into pure science or if you wanted to go into engineering science. And of course, engineering wasn't for me. So I went the route of pure science because that just made the most sense to me. And then when you're thinking about careers, if you're looking at science, you either want to be an engineer or you want to be a doctor. If you're looking at arts, you either want to be a lawyer or you want to be an accountant. So those seem to be the ones that are like, when you come back and say, okay, I'm going to be a doctor, everybody's like, yes, 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 that's my child. My child is going to be a doctor, right? And so that's the one that made the most sense. I also have an uncle who is a doctor. So I was like, yes, I just want to be like him. And so somehow that didn't work out for me in Nigeria. Going to university, it's almost like take whatever program you get. You're just glad that you get into school. And so I started with biochemistry. And then somewhere along the line, I decided, you know what? I'm not going to switch to medicine anymore because medicine was like so many years. And I was thinking I want to have a life. And I finished my biochemistry degree and then went on to do an MBA at Lagos Business School in Nigeria. Now, when I was to start that program, I was interviewed, and one of the questions they asked me was, "Why do you want to do this MBA?" And I was like, "I want to have my own business." That was what I said there, right? And so that means that that seed had probably been in my brain from that time. I just hadn't acted on it. And then eventually I moved to Canada and I was thinking, okay, so what do I do with my life? As an adult immigrant, it's like, okay, so we need to do something that leads us in the direction of making a good income. So I said, okay, why don't I pursue my dream to be a doctor again? And so from the information I got, I went back to do another Bachelor of Science degree in health science and started applying to medical schools. It's a process, I can tell you that. And then somewhere along the line, as I waited to get the admission, I got to see my friends get into medical school. And even one of the courses that we needed to do just to take the MCAT exam, we needed to do an introduction to sociology. We needed to do introduction to psychology. Sociology was like new to me and I love it. And in there, I got to learn that there are socio-economic determinants of health, meaning that aside from the things that break down in the body, there's like factors in our environments that affect groups of people. And that was very interesting to me because coming in as an immigrant, there's already this stress of how do I make ends meet? How do I pay my bills? How do I take care of my kids if you have kids and so on, right? And so that was there. And so my mom died in 2020. And all of a sudden it didn't feel as important anymore because I realized somehow I had this moment of clarity that part of the reason I wanted to do this, even though I thought, oh, this is my dream and all that, was because I really just wanted my parents to be happy for me and be proud that they have someone who is a doctor in the family. But then I had all these other interests that I hadn't really pursued because I was on this path to, I have to be a doctor. And
Mhm.
then my friends who got into medical school, I saw how stressed they were. And it clashed with my value of having a work-life balance. And it just wasn't making sense to me anymore. And I have a son who has an entrepreneurial spirit. Like that young man has been wanting to sell things or has been selling things since he was in grade 4. And it just relates that spark within me. My mom, she was an entrepreneur. She was a business person right till she died. And so it relates that in me that why don't I look into doing something for myself? And so that's kind of what deviated me. And I found that as I went towards that direction, I felt happier and more at peace with myself.
The social, economical factors that can affect health. One of them the is actually that I've actually had thought about was about like someone's health, like how like someone's like a financial being is affecting like their access to like the resources to be healthy, whether it be access to doctor or access to no to even to the right foods, because
Mhm.
we have to admit it, we're living in times where food is expensive. Like inflation has caused food to be ridiculously expensive, and it's now it's easier to just go to some convenience store and get some junk food than get some healthier like produce or some healthier foods that can nourish you and make you healthier.
Yes, so you're correct. Finances place a lot of stress on people, and they don't even have to be BIPOC, right? It's just that it's really evident, right, among the Black, indigenous people of color, right? There's so many ways that finances affect. You've mentioned one of them, which is access to healthy food. In fact, on top of that, I would say access to the information on what food is healthy, because it took me a couple of years to grow in my knowledge of what's healthy versus what's not healthy,
Mm,
right? And so, yeah, right. Like buying unhealthy food is cheaper. And when you have people or families who are struggling to stretch the dollar, then they'll buy the things that are cheapest,
mhm.
right? Um, on top of that, another way that finances affect a person's health is it affects the mental health because you're constantly stressed. You're constantly thinking, hey, I need to make money, or I have too much month than money. So it's trying to just stretch those dollars, or even the uncertainty of jobs, right? Am I going to have this job? Will I get fired? Or if they're fired, how are they going to get another job? And there's also, so that's just that mental stress that people are living with every day that affects the health. Another aspect to that is not even having the time to go get like regular medical care. Like we're fortunate to live in Canada, in Alberta, where we
Mhm.
have free healthcare, right? So part of that free healthcare means you can go to see your family doctor,
Mhm.
get your checkups, right? And your family doctor will recommend if you need to go do tests or something, right? Some people can afford to do that because they cannot afford to take time off work to go get those checks done. And then other aspects. So you find people who are working, especially jobs that might be a bit more physical, right? And not paying as much. They don't have access to other forms of healthcare that they need to just help them. Things like massage,
Yeah.
probably a chiropractor, physiotherapist, right? Those are usually not covered unless they have work that has those health benefits that allows them to access that. So if a person doesn't have time to go see a doctor, doesn't have enough money to buy healthy food, is under that constant mental stress of like, okay, money, trying to meet the bills and all of that, and still take care of themselves, their families, and probably people back home. They're immigrants from another country. then it does place a whole lot of stress. And you find that what the studies were showing, especially in the books, textbooks that I read in school, was talking about how you have a lot of people that have chronic diseases in specific races of people just because they didn't have the time to just go check things out and cut them off when they were starting. So yeah, finances really affect the person's well-being, physical, mental, and even emotional, right? It can be really depressing to be in this vicious cycle of, okay, it seems that this is my life. I have to work and work and work and work, sometimes work two, three jobs. I mean, I met a lady the other day, lovely lady. She works two jobs, Monday to Friday. She leaves home 4:45 a.m. and gets back home 11 p.m. And she's working two jobs every single day. Now, that might be the story of a lot of people, but I'm looking at her and thinking, if you keep up at this rate, sometime in the future, your body's going to break down. And she needs those two jobs to make ends meet.
Yeah, and somehow it's like just finances is stressing us out, and it's
Mhm.
just not making us healthier and to together. It's just not a healthy mix. Like, how do we just can we all make that just all stable? What do we need to do?
Financial literacy is important. Just that basic awareness of, okay, so what do I need to know about money? So personal finance is important. I actually wish that in schools, personal finance is taught, right, and is made
Right.
mandatory, right? It would help so many people. So I used to tutor, right? And I was tutoring this lovely young lady in grade 10.
Uh-huh.
Now there's Math 10A, Math 10C. I really love the C ones because they seem to have applications that is more suited for the real world. So Math 10A is okay, it's great, but Math 10C was talking about things like taxes and so on. And so I remember tutoring this young lady and we calculated, okay, we had a question where this is the amount of money that you're earning. And this is the amount for tax, this is the amount for CPP, EI, and all of that. By the time we finished calculating how much her take-home pay is, that girl was upset. She's like, what? Like, is this all I get to take home? She was like, they're robbing me. I'm like, oh, that's the reality of life, baby girl. That's the reality of life. And she was like, oh, no, 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 no. But then that literacy of, okay, so this is how much I earn. This is how much my take home pay is. And understanding something as simple as income versus expenses. A lot of
Mhm.
people usually know how much is coming in as income. We know exactly how much we make. But
Yeah.
then how much is going out seems to be a
Mhm.
problem. And people don't keep track of that. And it's something that we can easily learn. So if anyone is listening to this and they're thinking, well, I don't know how much my expenses are, like the information is available, right? There's some YouTube videos, however you like to consume your material that just explains things like that, really basic. And also learning the importance of saving and
Mm.
then once you get into that habit of saving money, get into that habit of investing, because that's how we begin to beat inflation that is always happening. So financial literacy, nobody actually can really have that excuse of saying, well, I don't know anything about this. Information is available. It just depends on what kind you're consuming. So having that basic not just to make money, because we go to school and we come out and we know how to get a job and make money. But then when you make the money, how do you catch that money?
Yeah.
How do you now make that money work for you?
Yeah. You know what? I have been talking to others about how how I felt that that same way that looking back at my my high school years or even
Mhm.
university, financial literacy was not a course at all, and it
Yep.
should have been, because that's when that's the age when we first started to earn paychecks. That's the age when some of us were looking to save up to paid for our tuition. Some of us were paying for our for clothes, entertainment, or whatever. Some of us were paying for future things. And once we were having like serious jobs, we were buying our cars. Actually, there's this funny clip that goes back to the 1980s. I know it's a little bit dark to use this reference, but it's from the Cosby Show, and it's
Okay.
Cliff using talking to Theo about like him getting a job, and he's breaking down. Okay, oh, you want to get a job, huh? Okay, and you want to get a car, and I think he's using Monopoly money to talk about. Okay, this is the money that you have from his job. Here's the paycheck. So now you want to
Okay.
use money for gas. A little bit
Okay.
goes away, and then insurance. A little bit goes away. So he has a girlfriend. A bit goes away, and then he talks about more expenses. And then by the end, I don't think Theo has anything left. So that's basically a breakdown of how you have to understand expenses. That's kind of a old clip of how finances can be explained in a funny way, but
Yep.
it should be have been taught like years ago, especially
Mm.
since a lot of millennials and the younger generation has so much financial debt. Hold up, flag on the play. I'm a millennial too. Why am I talking as if I'm not a millennial at all? Anyways, back to the show.
Yeah, it's important. There is, for those who watch Netflix or have Netflix, there is a show, okay? There is a show called Money Explained. It's like 5 episodes. There's an episode on credit cards, there's an episode on student loans, there's an episode on retirement. It's really nicely done. So I recommend people go watch it,
Mhm.
right? That's kind of like a basic education on like, okay, so these are the things we use and how to use it properly, right?
Mhm.
Because credit card is there. And like for myself coming from Nigeria, I didn't have credit card. It was either a debit card or cash. So basically, if you didn't have the money, you didn't spend it. No money, no more spending,
Yeah,
right? And
that's the
so,
smartest way.
yeah, and so my one of my concerns is there's all these people coming into the country, and some of them are coming from countries where credit wasn't a thing. And then you have access to all this money that you can borrow, right? And no idea of how it works when you don't pay the money back, right? And that going into all that financial debt and watching the debt increase is also another source of stress on people. And not having that education on, okay, so this is the proper way to use that, this is the proper way to use the credit cards, and building that financial discipline of, okay, I only spend what I can afford. And if I cannot afford it, then I need to go earn more, right? There's different layers and levels to it. But yeah, it should be taught there. If you wanted to go the route of like conspiracy, why isn't it being taught and all of that, right? There's a whole bunch of that where
Yeah,
some people are like, well, the people who want to be at the top want people at the bottom to not know what to do and all of that. But the information is out there for anybody who wants to. And if we're not getting it in the schools, then I highly, highly encourage self-education or speaking with a financial advisor that you trust. Right.
absolutely. Now, conspiracy don't interest me. What
Mm.
I but what I advocate for is simply financially literate, like
Mhm.
trying to understand how to make yourself financially stable,
Yeah,
not just for the now, but also for the long term.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And that financially stable can mean different things to different people.
Mhm.
So, and it's important to know that. I like that you mentioned financially stable for the long term because some people don't think about that. They're just thinking, and I do understand, especially like I'm always using that immigrant perspective because I came in as an immigrant. And financial stability when you're just coming in is I just need to make an income and then I need to be able to pay my bills, right? That's like the first level. And then once you get into that stability of now making an income, kind of figured out my surroundings a bit. I now understand that there are four seasons instead of two, and so on and so forth. And then you get that bit of stability. Then the next thing to think about is, okay, so how do I now plan for myself financially in the long term? And there's different vehicles that Canada has that makes that available. But the key thing that I will stress here is that to have anything for the long term, then money now has to be put aside for later. There's no two ways about it. That's it. That's as basic as you can get. Money now that you make now has to be put aside for later and also considering other ways to increase income, right? While still keeping expenses as level as possible. There's something called lifestyle creep, where our lifestyle creeps up to meet the increase in our income. So, for example, when I first came into the country, my husband and I, we had just the one car because that was what we needed and could afford at the time. And then after a while, as is typical for families, at some point you're like, okay, we can't keep waiting for the other person to bring the car
Yeah,
back. Now you have two
absolutely.
cars, right? And then it depends when you get the two cars. Now, are you going to get the most expensive cars just so that you know that, okay, now I can afford this and I have a job that is going to pay for it in the future? Or are you going to get cars that are within your means? Same thing with homes. Most people, a lot of people dream about being homeowners, but then it now depends on the kind of home that you're going to get for yourself. I've met people who say, you know what, I want a home that when I am paying the mortgage, even if I was working in Walmart, I can still pay the mortgage. So that means that they want to get a home that the mortgage payments are affordable. Whereas some people, they just want to get a big home and then not really thinking about the mortgage payments. So also thinking about the decisions you make to go into any kind of payments that are going to happen in the future. You need to consider that there are things that are coming in the future that require your dollar. So making those decisions now need to be made where you keep your payments as moderate as possible so that even if your income or emergencies come up in the future, then your income can still adjust for it.
That kind of reminds me of that of discussion my father used to have when he would talk to me about money, about there are wants and there are needs, and
Ah,
sometimes people will have a hard time distinguishing between both. Now, I'm not going to
mhm.
say that, I'm one of those people that will always make the right choice between the two. Like I will, I'll, I'll have my moments where I'll do something that I'll buy something because I absolutely want it. But that's you have to do it, of course, just in moderation. You just have to be, like careful about how manage a lifestyle, but you also have to really make sure that just your needs, financial, surpass uh, your your wants financially.
Yeah, you're right. And I like that you mentioned that because that's something that I tell my kids all the time. Like sometimes they're like, I want this. And I'm asking, is it a want or a need? Right? And some people use the term YOLO. Oh, you only live
Oh
once.
God,
So
that's a
you only live once. So I'm just going to get it because you only live once. I'm just going to do this because you only live once. But the thing is that you also need to live with the consequences of your financial decision,
uh-huh.
right? So if you decide that you absolutely must have that Gucci bag or that Louis Vuitton scarf or whatever it is that you really want, then you need to live with the
For
decision
whom?
of there are some people that those things matter to them, right? I'm more of like I don't really care about the brand, but for some people it matters to them. But then if you like that lifestyle, then you need to budget for that lifestyle in such a way that it does not affect other things for you, right? And yes, like you said, want and need. So that's where we have to do this journey of being aware of ourselves. Like you mentioned how I do videos on awakening.
Uh-huh.
So waking up to, okay, so this is how society usually goes. Like for example, for myself, I find that I see some clips and where it says that there's this guy that I listened to on TikTok, and he mentioned how black people when they get wealthy, right? And I know this is not for all black people, but usually black people when they get wealthy, then you have all the expensive looking things, the cars, the big houses. It's even if you look at some Nigerian music videos, when you want to know that somebody has arrived or they have money, then you're seeing a very big house and you're seeing a fleet of cars and so on, right?
It's
And
rented from someone else. Like what
yeah, but the thing is,
I have a
a
feeling
young
there's a fine
person,
print that should say, like it's a rental, but they're probably not gonna show you that.
yeah, but if someone is young and impressionable and watching that, then what they get molded into is that wealth means having really lovely, expensive shoes, bags, necklaces, cars, houses. They might not know any different, right? And it takes waking up to know, okay, so people who are actually really wealthy,
Hmm.
they don't do that. Like Steve Jobs, like he wore the same, like he
Hmm.
was always in like in a black t-shirt, and I can't remember what he wore as bottoms. But usually,
Yeah,
like sometimes they just look simple, right? And realizing and having that shift in mentality and waking up to it, maybe what I know as
hmm,
normal is not exactly normal. Maybe if I come out of this cave of fake glamour, I'll see that true wealth means doing something different, means
yeah,
living beneath my needs. Sorry, living beneath my income, right? Means saving for the future, means making sure that I invest, and means probably making sure that I have conversations with people who are financially smarter than myself, right? Or looking for alternative ways to make money that might not involve so much tax, right?
exactly,
More tax efficient ways and so on. So those are all those things that's available, but we need to wake up and really see that not everything that we know or do might not be it's just the same. Like you might see
exactly.
people that have all those glittery stuff, but then when you look at them later on in life, they're broke. So there's a problem. Like, why is that happening? So
Yeah,
maybe this is not the path to follow.
yeah. Like Kawhi Leonard recently was apparently like some made some headlines because of the car that he drives. Now, Kawhi
Hmm,
Leonard helped make the Toronto Raptors to a championship in 2019.
hmm.
He's the last person to physically get the the Finals MVP award from Bill Russell, and
Wow.
one of his cars is a 1997 Chevy Tahoe. I mean, this
Wow.
man is worth millions, and he drives a 1997 Chevy Tahoe, and apparently he got dragged on social media for it. But you know what? First off, in the 19 the it's a nice car. The Chevy Tahoe is a nice car, and also
Hmm.
like if it runs, it works.
Hmm.
So I think that
Different
he's
strokes
the
for different folks.
Hmm?
I said different strokes for different folks. The
Exactly.
oh, exactly. So it doesn't matter what you do, people will complain, right? There's this famous story about a man, a donkey, and his son, right? No, doesn't matter how. Have you ever heard that story?
What?
A famous story about a man, his son, and a donkey. Have you ever
No,
heard
tell me
that
about
story?
it.
Okay. So the story goes that there was a man and his son and a donkey, and they were on a journey, right? And so the journey was a long one. And what they did was they both sat on the donkey, right? And they were going. And people who were passing by were like, oh my goodness, poor donkey. I'm probably not saying it in order, but I'll say it as I remember it. Oh, poor donkey has to carry the weight of these two people. Oh my goodness. And then the man comes down from the donkey and allows his son ride the donkey and is walking beside his son and the donkey. And then other people passing by are like, how rude. This son has no respect, allowing this old man to just walk when the other one is younger and probably has more stamina than um than the man. And so they switch. The son comes down, the man gets on the donkey, and they're going on their journey. Another set of passers-by are like, oh my goodness, what a wicked father. He's like enjoying himself on this donkey and allowing his son to walk. The father does that. Eventually, both of them get off the donkey and walk beside the donkey. And another set of passers-by are like, what a waste. Both of them are walking when there's a donkey there that they can use. Like, what a waste. So it didn't matter which option they chose, there was always criticism. So that story, the lesson in it is that it doesn't matter what you do, someone will always
Always.
criticize it, right? So you might as well do
Mm-hmm.
what you want to do. But then,
Exactly.
that being said, when it comes to finances, you need to be careful, right? You need to be careful because you can make decisions that result in you being broke or result in generational debt. I listened to there was another person I listened to who was talking about, I think she's a therapist, and she was talking about a kind of trauma that comes like kind of like a generational trauma that's passed down from one generation to the other. And it's that stress of, okay, we're always struggling. Things will never be enough. Like you talked about your dad and how he told you to differentiate between a want and a need. And I'm thinking, that's a wise dad. That's amazing.
Yeah.
My dad, most
Yeah.
of the time, he used to say, I don't have money. I don't have money. And I started saying that to my own kids. Like, I
No.
don't have money. I don't have money. Like, I wasn't thinking, okay, so why don't I have enough money? And then when I made the switch into thinking, you know what, I need to be aware of my numbers. I need to understand. And when I think back on my dad, and he spent more than he made most of the time,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so I just followed that pattern.
Yeah.
And when I found
Mm-hmm.
myself saying that to my kids, I was thinking, I don't want to pass the same line of thought to them,
Mm-hmm.
right? I want them to think differently about money than how I grew up thinking
Mm-hmm.
about money. So I need to change that
Yeah.
money mindset.
My father was always smart with money. I used to think at one point that as a kid, when I wasn't, that mature, just because we weren't as didn't have like as nice a car or house as others, that we might have been poor. But as it turns out, it was just no, he was just we were just living within our means, and he was just being smart with his money. Like
Mm,
he was investing, and in fact, to really prove how smart he was, in 2002, we lived in we moved to Fort McMurray
okay.
and he bought the house at a pretty decent price. And then when my parents moved in 2013, the house, well, in that time, the we he decided to renovate the large parts of the house, and when the house got resold, it tripled in value.
Mm, mm.
when we moved here in Edmonton, the house that they bought here, they bought it in cash, debt free, no problem. Like he was always like working the books, and he was a man that knew how to crunch numbers, and that takes a serious discipline.
Yeah, yeah. And as you're saying that, I'm thinking that some people are listening to this and like, okay, so I didn't have the value of that upbringing.
Yeah.
I don't have the discipline to take note of my numbers, right? And I don't know what to do,
Yeah.
right? And I like to say, do what wealthy people do. Some of them, they don't figure it out all by themselves.
Hmm.
They seek professional help. Okay. Seek professional help. I like to say that if you're going to get in touch with someone who is going to help you with your finances, then let the person have the heart of a teacher. Okay. Who's willing to explain to you in terms that you understand what you're doing and why we're doing it. Not using all the, like we have all the technical knowledge, sorry, technical language that right in finance and all that. But then when the person is talking like, okay, so what does this mean? In simple terms, something that I can understand. And that's why I find YouTube such a great resource for just like really, really basic. And when it starts to get a bit more complicated, then you need to get people with professional help, professional expertise, because they've taken the time to study and all of that. And you get someone who you will explain to you and you're comfortable with, right? And that can help with that. I just from experience, while I talk to people, I find that for a lot of people, they struggle with budgeting. And I agree. I empathize because for a long time, I studied with budgeting as well. And I actually went through some books and some material just to figure out how to budget, right? There's some people that use Excel spreadsheets, and that's awesome. I am not an Excel spreadsheet person with regards to like my personal finances. I'm like a book and paper person, right? I like to write it down. That
Old
might be
school. I
your
respect that. I respect that.
that might be your method, right? And so there's some people they like have all these spreadsheets and they're like they know it. Like I'm like, nah, I have a different system, right? So and that might be your method,
My
right?
dad is a hybrid. He could do Excel, just like he could easily do do it on the books.
Yeah, no, like I can use an Excel spreadsheet. I just really like writing it down, right? I just like okay, so this is it, right? And if it's something that's a bit more complicated that requires me to use an Excel spreadsheet, fine. There's also budget apps, right? There's some apps that maybe people might be more comfortable using, but that's important. Basic to get started and saying, okay, I need to know what my income is, I need to know what my expenses, a budgeting app, or even like even if you go like maybe on Pinterest or even just Google search, there's some free printables you would see or free worksheets that have like budget. And what I like about them is that they get you thinking about expenses that you might not remember when you're trying to like name your expenses. Because there's some expenses that happen annually and there's some expenses that happen maybe not so frequently, right? And then you're like, oh shoot, I forgot about this. And then it just destroys the budget, right? So it gets one thinking about that. And a lot of people, when they're doing the expenses, sometimes they forget to include insurance, right? So insurance should be there, right? Car insurance, home insurance, life insurance, all the insurances should be there listed. Same with your subscriptions to what's it called? Entertainment subscriptions, right? Even something set aside for entertainment, right? If you're the kind of person who wants to eat out, then you need to budget it, right? Or if there's something that you really want to get or buy, then you can set aside some money. Okay, I'm saving towards this thing, and then I can buy it, right? And so on. So something simple like that actually increases your sense of control over your finances, and it doesn't feel like I see the money coming in. but like, where does it go? No, then you begin to build that muscle, that discipline on, okay, I'm kind of like taking note of what's going on with my finances. So budgeting is a big one for people, and that's where I suggest everyone get started. If that's not an issue and saving is the issue, get started with that. But if you've saved all that money and then you're like, okay, so what do I do next? Then you need professional help so that you get your money invested in places that would actually benefit you and done by someone with a license so you don't feel like you're being swindled.
Yeah, exactly. And that's exactly what you're here for, right?
Yep.
Exactly.
Yes.
And people can just easily come to you. You have so much resource to give out, and you'll be, yeah, you're more than happy to help them out.
Yeah.
And also, there's the article on no, this idea of perfection versus progress, which fascinated me because
I think it's the other way around. Is it? I think it's progress versus what was the title?
progress versus perfection. Actually, I found it really fascinating, just because I was reading that, I was actually wondering, like, in like when someone is trying to perceive, well, trying to attain like like perfection. I think do you think really the idea should be that they're trying to achieve excellence?
The issue I have with perfection is that it's a moving target. That's the way I perceive perfection. Like, and that's why I like progress over perfection. If you're trying to achieve excellence, I believe that happens incrementally. It's not like you arrive at a certain place and all of a sudden perfection is achieved. Like, who determines what is perfect? Who determines that this is perfection? Everything is usually a standard that has been determined by someone. So, for example, if the one that readily comes to mind for me is um beauty. Okay.
Mhm.
So who determines what the standard of perfection is? Like there was a time in my life where I would watch these shows that would talk about the top 10 sexiest men in the world or the top 10 sexiest women in the world. And you know what I was curious about? I wanted to see like, okay, so and then when I would see, I would
Oh,
like,
that
oh,
though that People magazine thing, they always.
oh there, and sometimes it would be as like a show. And I used to wonder what criteria did they use, right, to determine that these are the top 10 sexiest in the world. Because some of them I would see and I'm like, no. And some I'm like, okay, maybe. Like what is the criteria? So that means it's a criteria. The perfection thingy is set by some people, and it might not even be authentic for you. And you find yourself always struggling towards something that you may not achieve because it's not really something you should have been working towards in the first place. And so the perfection now becomes like some unattainable goal, and then people can give up because perfect, I don't think anybody ever reaches there. But progress is a different thing. I can decide to improve day by day, even just by 1% or something over what I'm doing. Like for myself, I try to improve with regards to my physical fitness, right?
Mhm.
So I'm plump, right? And so I work out and I have told myself that, okay, you know what, I'm not trying to be perfect. So perfect to me in terms of like physical fitness would be like I was a figure eight and then I had a washboard, flat tummy and whatever, whatever, right? And I don't know if that's going to be for me, but I can choose to improve and progress towards being physically healthy and fit for myself and my
There
body
you go.
type, right? So, and that is better than because the standard of perfection is probably not true to me, right? And I'll always feel like I'm failing.
With the idea of progress, you actually try to just better yourself. It's about the journey, and somehow
Hmm.
it's just trying to make yourself better. Like it's
Hmm.
something that you could, and that's how you just get it, get like get everything better. From goods and services to the better entertainers to the best to even the best athletes.
Yeah, it's just working on yourself one step at a time. I like to think about it as yes, there are people we can look up to in terms of their success in an area that we're trying to achieve success in. But then it's me versus me, right?
Mhm.
I'm trying to improve over myself of yesterday, right? And that's important. Um, I remember if I think about myself in 2020 versus now, and I mentioned 2020 because I started working out a lot in 2020. It was kind of like my therapy for just processing grief over my mom's passing. And I noticed very, very quickly that my shoulders were not strong. A lot of the workouts, especially the ones that require you to be on the floor, I just realized that the shoulders are weak.
Oh.
Flexibility is poor. Mobility is like non-existent. So and when I compare that to now, right, I can put on one of my boots or shoes without needing to balance on something. That's an improvement, right? I
Amen to
can
that.
easily
Congrats.
do my planks and my shoulders don't feel like they are going to buckle, right? So I might not have achieved the weight loss that I wanted to, but I can say that my flexibility has improved, my joint strength has improved, and my mobility is increased. And so when I compare me versus me then I feel like I've made progress. And I feel better about continuing rather than comparing myself to a perfect standard that I might never achieve.
As usual, I have these three questions that I have for all of my guests. First question, how what does living your truth mean to you?
Living my truth means, to me, it means that I'm living in congruence with my values. So, and that's important. I am part of my story. I talked about how I was studying biochemistry in my university in Nigeria, and I had a chance to switch to medicine. But I didn't because I realized that one day I would get married. Well, that was the dream. And I would have kids, and I wanted a situation where I would have enough time for them. And so even though I couldn't name it then, work-life balance was important to me, right? And so I did make the switch. And then in 2020, when I was thinking, okay, do I still want to continue pursuing this um being a medical doctor in Canada, or should I do something else? That value came up for me again. Work-life balance is important to me, right? My values of like integrity, authenticity. I need to do something that is feels true to me, and that's important. And so when I live my values, that is living my truth. I'll give you a very simple example that is probably funny. So one of the ways I live my truth is with my hair. Is with my is with my hair. All right. I I've done different things with my hair. Like I find I don't like weaves, right? And I know before people come after me, like I don't
Come
like
on now. Well,
I,
hey, you know what? I used to have dreadlocks.
yeah, I have dreadlocks now, right? It's just
Yeah.
that sometimes I put braids over them. I find
Yeah.
that I only like hairstyles that like you could trace back to African roots, right? I like the
Mm,
locks, I like the braids, I
yeah.
like the hair out, the fro, I like all of that. But like the straight, glossy hair, wig, weave, I don't like it. And I
Yeah.
find that whenever I try it, people give me compliments that I look really nice, right? But it doesn't feel true to me.
Mm,
What feels true to me is to be this, like with my
mm.
braids and well, whatever color I decide to do at that time. And and just something that when I do it, I just feel like, oh, this reminds me of home,
Yeah.
right? So people who know me, like there's some people they've told me who have told me that they can find me in a store just from the color of my hair.
Oh my
They're
God.
like, they saw the color in hair, like that must be AJ. They must be Ejadamen, right? And something. But so that's one way. So when I'm living in
Mhm.
congruence with my values, then I feel like I'm living my truth. And when I say that, some people might be thinking, okay, so, but I don't know what my values are. Simple. Google a list of values and figure out the one that you connect with. No, seriously. And that was what I did. I saw a list of values one day and I was looking at them and the ones that really resonated with me. And I thought about my life and examples of my life. And I realized that I have to be authentic. That's very important. So authenticity is one of my values, right?
And that's why
And
you're
if,
here.
thank you.
Authenticity, and that's why you are here.
Yeah, it's it's just so freeing to be your authentic self. And even from the when I talk on like when I release content on social media, I'm encouraging people to be their authentic self. When I speak to some people, a lot of people are saying, hey, I don't really know myself and I don't like myself. But I'm like, okay, great. Now we've identified that is an issue. Now, the thing we should be thinking about is getting to know yourself and like yourself, right? Because that's the only way you can now share yourself to other people. Like someone can be listening to this right now and saying, yes, she talked about the hair, or she talked about the hair color or something. There's been people who said they felt more comfortable talking to me because they just like the color of the hair, right? But if I wasn't bold enough to do my hair in the colors that I wanted, then the people who are feeling weird about it wouldn't have that confidence to do that, right? So authenticity is such a big deal. And it's a currency that I think we will never run out of because so many people are not being their authentic selves that when you meet people being their authentic self, it's like refreshing water and like, wow, like I admire this and this makes sense, right? So authenticity is a big thing to me. And anyone who knows me will always see me as my authentic self because I like myself. I'm in touch with myself and I'm aware of my strengths and my shortcomings and vulnerable about that. And I know that there are areas I need improvement in, and I work on that. And that's just being human.
Yeah. Knowing yourself is the beginning of all wisdom. Words from
Yes.
that's actually, I know that you had mentioned at one point the Plato in one of your videos or postings online. That is a quote from Socrates.
Uh,
That knowing yourself, that's Socrates.
yeah.
I thought it would be relevant to what you had just said because you talked
Yep.
about the allegory of the cave earlier, so that
Hmm.
really binds into what you just said.
Yeah. Thank you.
And second question, how does living your truth and being authentic make you a better person?
Oh my. I believe that everyone here on earth is here for a reason, and we are meant to affect other people. If I am not being authentic and living my truth, then I'm stuck trying to figure myself out. I can't help anybody else. And when you look at life, we're not just islands, like we are people, we affect each other in different ways. Like my strength can be complement your weakness, and your weakness can complement my strength. And the only way I can do that is when I'm authentic and living my truth. So it makes me a better person because I feel confident and bold enough to put myself out there. And in doing so, I strongly believe this, that I gave people permission to also be curious enough to want to wake up and be curious enough to want to explore themselves and live their authentic lives. Sometimes I meet women who are like they don't realize that they could give themselves permission to have fun, or and fun means different things to different people, just permission to just relax or to just be, or just relax in their femininity, or even probably be step into their masculine side, right? Because I believe everyone has both. And just something like that. And just interacting with people. There are some people that are like, wow, you know what? I like that. So what I've seen, it gives me, they feel like it gives them permission to now be more authentic, or even to just explore the thought of, okay, maybe I should consider living my own truth as well, which is what really drew me to your podcast, right? When I saw Truth Be Told and I read what it was about, I was like, okay, this is nice, because sometimes people just need that encouragement to just come out and live your truth. But what does that mean? It means different things to different people. But as
Mhm.
much as I do it, I find that
Exactly.
I grow and I feel like I'm a light, right? A growing light that is now shining out to people. And it can probably be a beacon that now draws people and say, hey, there's something different from this cave that I've been living in that I can now go out and explore. And as more people do that, the world just increases, improves, and becomes better and better just because of that action of a few people who have decided to live their truth.
I'm so glad that to hear that. And then finally, the third question: what advice would you give to someone looking to embrace themselves?
First advice, turn off the noise. There's a lot of noise, and there's a lot of things going on. Like there's social media, there's um there's always some kind of like noise. I would suggest that you need to be genuine, you need to be true to yourself. Like what that means is you need to get to know yourself. And it can be uncomfortable just looking at yourself. So not just in the mirror, but like actually looking at yourself. And if you're looking to embrace yourself, I suggest you just think about yourself and your life till now. I like to say that you give yourself clues. I know there's a show called Blues Clues that I never watched, but you give yourself clues, and you've always been doing the things that give you clues as to who you are. You just need to pay attention to it. And sometimes you might even need to just record it. Or you might even need to just ask somebody or ask a few people and say, hey, if someone asked you to describe me or describe me with 3 words, right? What would you say? Who would you say I am? And because sometimes we don't see ourselves, we see other people more than we see ourselves. So you want to embrace yourself, then you need to gather information about yourself. You gather the information from your past activities, your past passion, your passions, your loves, the things you don't like, or the things you don't even like in people, and then the things people see about you, and then record it, like what you really like about yourself, and have that self-discovery. Have moments where you just sit in quiet and just think and get in touch with yourself. But that does require some quiet and disconnecting from the noise. That does require you looking at yourself, even at the parts that you don't like, right? That does involve you creating something like what's it called? Like a swag sheet on yourself where you write your achievements and what people have like commended you on. Write that down. In fact, I strongly encourage you to write it down and put it somewhere where you can always see it, because sometimes you forget um, how great you are, how amazing you are. Write that down, right? And then practice looking at yourself in the mirror. Really look at yourself and smile at yourself. And then maybe it feels squeamish. And then stay there. Next day, you come back and do it again and tell yourself, I like you. I want to get to know you. I think you're interesting. And then you do that over and over again until you get comfortable with just looking at yourself and talking to yourself. Well, maybe not on the streets, but like just saying good things to yourself, right? And that's important because the last part I said is probably the most important. Say good things to yourself. Compliment yourself when you look at yourself in the mirror, because too many people say horrible things about themselves. Say, oh, I'm so bad at this. I'm such an idiot. Don't say things like that to yourself. Say good things to yourself, especially with that swag sheet in front of you that shows you how amazing you are. When someone gives you a compliment, write it down again. And that's you getting to know yourself and loving yourself and embracing yourself and practice the things you're passionate about. If you like to color, color. If you like to dance, that I love to dance. I might not be a very good dancer, but I love to dance and I love music. And so I do that because it makes me feel happy with myself. So wanting to embrace yourself, you need to get to know yourself. Get that swag sheet down. Look at yourself in the mirror, smile at yourself, say nice words to yourself, and your journey begins.
Words of wisdom from Ejadamen. You can follow her on Facebook as well as on Instagram at Ejadamen, as well as on on TikTok under the same handle, Ejadamen. Also, she has another account on Instagram at Jada's Awakening Mind, where you can follow her, and she has many insightful thoughts for the mind, many awakening thoughts for you to go on through the day, and for you to awaken your thoughts and shine a light on you. Ejadamen, it has been an absolute pleasure to have you with you, and also anywhere other way that people can reach out to you in case that perhaps they want to get some financial services from you.
Yeah, so if you're living in Canada listening to this and you're needing to contact me to just talk about finances, then you can reach me on like the handles that Pierre has just mentioned, right? I also, my LinkedIn is there, so you'll find me in LinkedIn as Ejadamen Ogidan, and just shoot me a DM, and we will talk. So through my social media handles, LinkedIn, Instagram, there's another one, Facebook, you'll find me there. And then just shoot me a message and we'll talk.
All right. All right, and I want to thank my guest, Ejadamen Ogidan, for being my guest on my podcast. And to you, my listeners and viewers, thank you so much for attending. And remember, stay true.